right, so we're in the file. We've got some transitions set up. I know I don't have all the trim in here. But if you go to the other layers, you can see that there's some couches. I called that furniture and the other couches. I don't know why. All others, got fireplace, got a lot of stuff going on here. And what we did in class is that I had people kind of muck around and look at all of the different textures. Now, that's the wrong word. Look at all the different materials and surfaces. And yes, we know that a couple of them are broken. They need to be reversed. So all of these ones right here that are like strange looking, if you go to mesh display reverse, they will look better again. I think maybe this one is the same way. Probably. And I'm not sure what happened. This file's been around for a long while, and it's been mucked around with a lot. So who knows? But one of the things you'll notice is that some things in here are shiny in a way that we're not used to seeing. Everything we're used to seeing is flat, flat, flat. And this is shiny in a different way than this. So like, look how shiny that is. And then if I look at this down here, ooh, that's got a highlight on it. Meanwhile, the floor doesn't, the couch doesn't, the couch cushions don't. So these are all due to different kinds of materials. Now, a quick review, very quick review about materials. There's a longer video on it from week 1. Windows, rendering editors, Hypershade. This is where we go to create things, although you can edit most of the things somewhere else. These are all of the shaders that are in here. You'll remember with the planets, we were clicking on where it said Lambert, created a new one, and then we were labeling it like new cat shader, because little cat statue. And maybe I wanted to try my hand at making it look copper, so I had to change the color, and I just realized I have the wrong one selected if I want it to look like copper, because this is not going to look shiny. That's okay, we can fix it later. We get a preview up here that at school, frankly, sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Hooray. I hit done, and I named it new cat shader, which is great. And if I want to apply it to the cat, I have to right click and hold, assign existing material, and scroll through a whole bunch of these, and they're not in order. Thankfully, mine isn't tagged living room, so it just says new cat shader. And now it's brown, not metallic looking at all. If I go to the attribute editor and bring up this tab, now we get these settings. Now we used Lambert for all of the planets, but if we click the word Lambert, you'll see that there's several others. And I really wish I could just get rid of the hair shaders and ramp shaders and all these weird things, because there's just a few that you'd want to use. See the blend? That works out a little bit better. Wrong color though. I still want to lighten that maybe. Yeah, it still looks like plastic. For shiny things, you can use a blend or an anisotropic, big fancy word. Anisotropic has the sort of most detailed / strangest highlights. There's also Fong and Fong E. They do look different. And you can change them after the fact, although don't go changing them around too much. And you can see they look different from each other. I believe the lamps are anisotropic. Works really well on this like rounded stuff. At least I think it is. There we go. No, I lied. It's a blend. If I change it to anisotropic, it'll... it's not great. Undo. There we go. But that's some of the settings. So you can change, by changing the actual material, it changes how the highlight works. Also called specular shading. So there are all these other settings on here that now matter. If you have a dual monitor, you can actually go into the Hypershade and change those things without this being selected, which is how you would get a better look at how it works. But you can change the reflectivity of something. You can change the color of the highlight. I don't know how good that would change anything. Or here we go. doesn't help at all. Excuse me. If I go to this one here, there we go, coffee table settings, eccentricity is turned way down. There's also different settings because it's a Blinn and this one is a Phong. Right, so they have different types of settings. There we go. Oh, there. You can see the well, you can see some of them changing. Oh, I can change my reflected color. That is fun. That's not what I wanted. Gotta make sure to actually change the color. There we go. Whoa. Oh, I completely skipped this. Transparency. You can make something semi-transparent. The glass, for example, which is living room glass, it's turned up almost all the way, but you can turn it down and make it cloudier. So like a frosted glass. And you will notice then when I do that here, it happens there and there. All of the glass in here is the same shader. Now that's a feature, not a bug. It's so you can change multiple things at the same time because they're supposed to be the same anyways. This is a coffee table set, right? They would have the same settings. Transparency. Ambient color makes things kind of glow without actually giving off any color. We don't really... doesn't really work here. Some people were using it to make the sun kind of glow, which looked really nice. Let's see, so transparency. Yeah, this isn't going to do much because we're dealing with something that's relatively transparent. You can see that some of these materials have some of these objects have different shaders. You can select faces and give this to one face and this to the other face. It's not ideal, but it works for us for now because we don't have anything else. Yeah, they gave this a slight ambient color. And then, yeah, it's a Blinn. And some of these settings are very subtle. You can see I have one coffee table selected and then I'm watching this one here. The specular roll-off changes, this all changes this highlight right here. This is turned down, it's not all the way up. This isn't turned up at all. There we go, so you can make it reflective. Alright. And how it looks in here is different than how it's going to render. See, that's the other thing. We're not getting to rendering yet. But how things look in here is just a preview. It's getting closer, but it's still not close. So, what is the point of this week's assignment? Well, this was the file where everyone in class sort of broke everything on purpose, like just to test things out, and they would go in and they'd make new materials, or they'd tinker with these and see what happened, and they'd find that there's these apples that it says it's red, but it's not red, and then there's this thing here, and what that means is that it's linking to a color map that doesn't exist anymore because the file got lost. So if you wanted it to actually look red, we'd need to apply a new material. We will get to linking to things like this later. We're just not there yet. So this is the file where everyone kind of mucked about and broke everything and just kind of tinkered and tried to see what happens when they change a Phong to a Blinn and what happens when they change the settings on one thing versus another, because also the lighting affects everything. So how this looks over here is different than how this will look over here because there's a little bit of a light under here. I set it up so that this lamp is on and this lamp is off. Alright, so that was in class, and then for the homework we have the other file called, there's just the room, And if I recall correctly, the living room is linked to under lecture files, and the room is linked to under the homework. And we're waiting. It will eventually open, I swear. There it is. So the idea was to, from a much cleaner file with a much simpler file, make some materials and see what happens, right? You can right click on something and hold and actually say assign new material from here, so you don't need the Hypershade. And what's nice is that it's only giving me a few options. So I can say Blinn, and I can make it semi-transparent because it's fishbowl. And I can make it maybe kind of bluish, like a blue kind of glass. There we go. And I can start to tinker from there, and I can tinker with these settings and turn this down and turn this up, and then see how ooh, a little bit more on the highlights now that I did that, right? Don't worry about the fact that there's a little bit of a wrong thing in there. Some people were being so bold as to use the paint select tool to select different faces on the table. So they would use the paint select tool, which we've gone over in other videos. And unless you hold down control, it's just going to keep adding. So it's not like other things. Also, you can hold down B and then drag to the right and make the brush a little bit bigger, which has its downsides because you can see I'm getting other things. And you know what, maybe I'll make the whole top of it one color and the legs another color, just because that's easier. This is the kind of thing where you need to be very careful while you're selecting. Make sure you get everything. I mean, you can always add it later, but like, who wants to? There we go. And I hit W on the keyboard to see. Oh yeah, there's an underneath. I won't do that here because I don't want to bore you. But I can add one material to that and another one to the legs. So I could make the top of this shiny, and then the bottom of it, you know, the legs of it, a matte color. There is always that option. So there we go. Make this brown here, and then I could go into face mode again. These are easier to select because they're pretty simple. Assign new material. Make this not shiny. And maybe I make it a lot darker. And the whole thing ended up too dark, but, and I need to deal with this, but you get the idea. Assigning materials, try to keep things in control in terms of if you're selecting faces, like which faces are selected. Also remember that I've tied all these pieces together, so if you, did I lock this? Well, that's interesting that I can't select that. I wonder what I did. Whoops. I'll have to figure out what's causing that wonderful glitch. Wait, I know why. I'm not in object mode. Alright. If you select a piece of the camera and you hit up, you get the whole camera. If you select a piece of the watch and hit up, you get the whole watch. So, don't go selecting every tiny piece of the watch. But apply different materials just to get practice in on applying materials and on selecting things in here, creating new materials. They're not, you know, you can't render them, so they don't need to look perfect, but experiment with different types of materials, Lamberts, Fongs, Blinns, etc. And just see if you can get things to be different colors in a controlled way where there's not random faces that are left off and where things are not broken.